Saudi Arabia, has executed 17 people in just 3 days in 2025, marking the fastest pace of capital punishment since 2022 and raising the total number of executions this year to 239 by late August. This alarming acceleration follows 2024's historic high of 345 individuals executed, double the number from 2023, and signals that the kingdom may surpass even that record-breaking figure. Among those executed in the current surge are increasing numbers of women, continuing a pattern of gender-based capital punishment that traces back to one of the most controversial executions in Saudi royal history. On July 15, 1977, 19-year-old Princess Misha'al Bint Fahd Al-Saud was shot to death in a parking lot in Jeddah, becoming the first Saudi princess ever executed for adultery. Her death, alongside her alleged lover, would expose the brutal reality of Saudi justice applied even to royal women, creating international outrage and establishing precedents that continue to influence the kingdom's treatment of women under Islamic law nearly 50 years later. The story of Princess Misha'al begins in the complex web of Saudi royal succession and the restrictive social framework that governed women's lives in the 1970s kingdom. Misha'al Bint Fahd Al-Saud was born in 1958 into a royal family that had only recently consolidated power over the Arabian Peninsula. Misha'al was the granddaughter of Mohammed bin Abdulaziz Al-Saud, the power behind the Saudi throne and one of the original Saudi playboys. This lineage placed her within the inner circle of the ruling family. But as a woman, her position was fundamentally different from that of male royals, who enjoyed considerable freedom to travel, study abroad, and engage in business and politics. The Saudi Arabia of the 1970s was a society in rapid transition, with oil wealth transforming the desert kingdom while conservative religious and tribal traditions maintained strict control over social behavior, particularly regarding women. The reign of King Khalid, who had assumed power in 1975 following the assassination of King Faisal, represented a period of increased conservative religious influence and governance. This religious conservatism directly impacted women's rights and freedoms, creating an environment where even royal women faced severe restrictions on their personal choices and movements. The legal framework governing adultery in Saudi Arabia was based on strict interpretations of Islamic Sharia law that had been codified into the kingdom's judicial system since its founding. Saudi law technically allows the death penalty for a variety of crimes. Adultery: unmarried adulterers can be sentenced to 100 lashes. Married ones can be sentenced to stoning. This legal structure applied to all citizens regardless of social status, though in practice, enforcement varied significantly based on tribal connections, wealth, and political influence. The application of these laws to women was particularly harsh, as female testimony carried less weight in court proceedings and women had limited legal representation or advocacy. The circumstances surrounding Princess Misha'al's alleged adultery remain disputed and shrouded in conflicting accounts that reflect the secrecy surrounding the case. Saudi Princess Misha'al Bint Fahd Al-Saud was found guilty of adultery when she was 19, in 1977, and she was publicly executed alongside her lover. According to various reports, she had attempted to flee Saudi Arabia with a young man, but they were apprehended before leaving the country. Some accounts suggest she was trying to escape an arranged marriage, while others indicate she was attempting to pursue a romantic relationship forbidden by her family and Saudi law. The trial proceedings reveal the intersection of royal privilege and religious law in Saudi Arabia's judicial system. On her return to the courtroom, she repeated her confession: "I have committed adultery. I have committed adultery. I have committed adultery. I have committed adultery." This confession became central to the case, though questions arose about whether it was given voluntarily or under coercion. People may be convicted solely on the basis of confessions obtained under torture, other ill treatment, or deception. The repetitive nature of her confession and the circumstances under which it was obtained raised international concerns about due process and fair trial standards. The execution itself departed from standard Saudi procedures and took place under controversial circumstances that would later fuel international criticism. Princess Misha'al Bint Fahd bin Mohammed, a granddaughter of the king's elder brother, was publicly executed for adultery, as was her alleged lover Khalid Mahalal. The execution would have remained unreported, but for the presence near the scene of a British construction worker. Misha'al Bint Al-Saud was a princess who was, 15th of July 1977, shot several times in the head in a car park in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, while her lover, who was beheaded for adultery upon her reported confession. The unusual method and location of the princess's execution diverged significantly from standard Saudi capital punishment procedures. The grandfather's retainers shot the princess dead in front of her husband. The husband was then beheaded, in a way that was especially gruesome because it was inflicted not by a Saudi executioner used to wielding the special sword, but by the old prince's bodyguards. This irregular execution, carried out by family retainers rather than official executioners, suggested elements of honor killing rather than formal judicial procedure, though Saudi authorities later defended it as legitimate punishment under Islamic law. The international response to Princess Misha'al's execution was swift and sustained, marking one of the first major international controversies over Saudi Arabia's internal justice system. They were both executed after sentence by an Islamic court for adultery, the Saudi embassy said in a formal statement. For an adulterous act, the law is death. This official justification failed to satisfy international critics who questioned both the fairness of the proceedings and the proportionality of the punishment. The case became a symbol of women's oppression under conservative Islamic governance and highlighted the collision between traditional religious law and modern human rights standards. The execution gained even greater international attention through the 1980 British television drama Death of a Princess, which dramatized the events surrounding Misha'al's case. The event was recreated in the 1980 docudrama Death of a Princess. The film was a co-production with England's Associated Television Corporation and sparked diplomatic tensions between Britain and Saudi Arabia. The Saudi government threatened economic retaliation against British companies, demonstrating the kingdom's sensitivity to international criticism of its judicial system and women's rights record. The precedents established by Princess Misha'al's execution continue to influence Saudi Arabia's approach to gender-based capital punishment today. Current statistics reveal that women remain subject to execution under the same legal framework that governed the princess's case in 1977. In 2024, Tazir sentences accounted for 40% of total executions, up from 36.49% the previous year. This category of discretionary sentences, which can be applied to adultery cases, demonstrates the continued relevance of the legal principles that led to Princess Misha'al's death. The scale of executions in contemporary Saudi Arabia far exceeds the isolated case of 1977, with women increasingly caught in the kingdom's expanded use of capital punishment. The surge has drawn concern from rights groups, casting a shadow over the kingdom's reform narrative under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. By August 2025, Saudi Arabia had already executed 239 people, with the recent three-day execution spree of 17 individuals, representing the fastest pace of capital punishment since 2022. According to data from the Saudi press agency, the authorities executed at least 200 individuals in the first 9 months of 2024 alone, more than the number of executions for any whole year in the past 3 decades. This dramatic increase includes women executed for various offenses, from drug-related crimes to political dissent, showing how the precedent of executing royal women for moral transgressions has evolved into routine application of capital punishment across gender lines. The methods and legal justifications used in Princess Misha'al's case remain embedded in Saudi Arabia's current judicial system. Non-lethal crimes including adultery, armed robbery, apostasy, drug-related offenses, rape, witchcraft, and sorcery are punishable by death. This broad application of capital punishment for non-violent offenses reflects the same religious conservative interpretation of Islamic law that governed the princess's case, though the scale and frequency of application have increased dramatically. From a global perspective, the execution of Princess Misha'al occurred during a period when international women's rights advocacy was gaining momentum, making her case a rallying point for critics of gender-based discrimination in Islamic law. The 1970s saw the emergence of international women's rights organizations and the beginning of systematic documentation of violence against women globally. The princess's execution provided concrete evidence of how religious law could be used to justify extreme punishments for behavior that would be legal in most other countries, contributing to broader international debates about cultural relativism versus universal human rights. The case also highlighted the particular vulnerability of women within authoritarian systems where religious and traditional authority intersect. Unlike male members of the royal family who might face exile or house arrest for transgressing social norms, Princess Misha'al's gender made her subject to different and more severe forms of social control. This pattern continues today, with women activists and dissidents facing harsh punishments in Saudi Arabia, even as the kingdom promotes economic reforms and modernization under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The execution of Princess Misha'al Bint Fahd Al-Saud remains a watershed moment in the intersection of gender, power, and justice in Saudi Arabia, establishing precedents that continue to reverberate through the kingdom's legal system nearly 50 years later. Her death demonstrated that royal status provided no protection for women who violated conservative social norms, while simultaneously revealing the extent to which religious law could be applied without regard for international human rights standards. The dramatic escalation from that single, controversial execution in 1977 to 2025's already staggering pace of 239 executions by August, including 17 people killed in just 3 days, illustrates how legal precedents can evolve far beyond their original context. As Saudi Arabia faces renewed international pressure over its treatment of women and use of capital punishment, the memory of Princess Misha'al serves as both a reminder of how far women's rights have deteriorated under religious conservative rule and a symbol of the ongoing struggle between traditional authority and human rights in the modern Middle East.